Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Free Agent Podcast. Today, I've got Karina Mikhli. Karina, so excited to have you. Thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what's so exciting about this is kind of the overlap between what you do, what my company does. You yourself are a fractional COO. I'm not a fractional person, but I like to connect it to you. You've got a community. So really exciting time, I think, in the space in general, and really appreciate you joining today.
Of course, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So prior to jumping into things, I'm going to give a quick bio on you, and then we'll talk about your background and get into the meat and potatoes here. But Karina is a former teacher, personal trainer, publishing executive turned fractional COO. Karina spent over 7 years in the fractional space, providing organizations her services to SaaS, communities, professional services as well. In addition to providing her COO services on a fractional basis, Karina recently founded Fractionals United, a free community for all fractional leaders where they can connect, collaborate, and learn from each other. Thanks so much for joining.
My pleasure. That was an interesting bio.
Yeah, okay. Did I hit the high points? Did I miss anything that needed to be underscored?
You hit a lot. You went further back than most people do, which was curious and interesting. I also do workflow consulting on the side, but that's just that's fun.
That's the fun stuff. Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit more about you and your background and how'd you get started as a fractional leader?
So, as you mentioned, I started out in the publishing industry, and after one too many reorgs and layoffs because of Amazon and digital, I started dipping my toes into freelancing and what now would have been called fractional, but back then didn't have a name.
Right.
I just realized that there was a pattern, which is that I was running small to mid-sized businesses and several at a time. And because it didn't have a name back then, when people asked me what I did, I explained that no one goes into business to run the business.
Right.
And that founders get overwhelmed as soon as there's any modicum of success and need someone like me to deal with the people and the systems in the day-to-day. I don't even remember when I heard fractional the first time. I think it was like maybe 3-4 years ago. I don't even recall anymore. But that's how my brand, Right Size COO, came about because fractional didn't exist back then.
Understood. And so currently, I mean, majority of the consulting work that you provide is just strictly COO services to SaaS companies, professional services, et cetera, basically acting as kind of the integrator to the visionary or CEO or president of a company.
So I think it's worth mentioning that the difference between fractional work and consulting work. So when I say I'm a workflow consultant, that's, very project-based. There's an end point. Even long-term projects have an end point. Fractional work, you're an integrated part of the team. There is rarely an end date. There really isn't any difference between a fractional COO and a full-time COO, except you're doing it a fraction of the time. So
Sure.
you have other things you're going on, but you have a team, you represent the company. So I like to differentiate between fractional work and consulting because they're both great and I do both, but they're very different.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. And again, my company, we use the term fractional as well as interim, but we also do placement. So we're in that space too. And, I typically kind of define it as a fraction of a work week. And that's to be defined by both the company as well as the fractional leader on what that project and scope actually looks like. And we do things in addition to COO, but, across the silo leadership team. So, I totally understood that and understand that and appreciate kind of, you specifying and clarifying the difference. Talk to me a little bit about Fractionals United. So this is a pretty exciting community that you've created, and it's a recent development. I mean, maybe it was in the works for some time, but it's my understanding that it's really grown very, very quickly. So talk to me a little bit about the community, kind of the purpose, and the why behind founding it.
Yeah, so I'll start with the latter part. So I had actually gone full-time. Well, I had a client that I started out as a workflow consultant, mentioned in passing that I do fractional COO work. She started referring to me as her COO without discussion, which was interesting and I guess ideal. And then over time, I actually went full-time with her. And so I took a break from fractional and came back at the beginning of 2023 to a very different landscape than two plus years ago, which is the most recent time I was looking for fractional work. On the one hand, it's way more popular, right? Everyone wants to be it or talking about it or writing about it. On the other hand, it felt harder and lonelier. It's there, because there's a lot more and there's a lot more supply than demand. It's
Mhm.
definitely harder to find the work. And I had joined a bunch of really great online communities in the last 2 years, so I knew the power of community. And I started looking for my fellow fractionals, but I
Mhm.
didn't quite find it what I was looking for. I found platforms, I found communities on the other side of paid programs, but no like real community for the sake of community. So I decided to see if there was enough of an interest. Like I'm always the integrator, as you mentioned, rarely the visionary. And usually when I have an idea and I research, it's been done. And I remember like January 7th, I had this idea that I needed my tribe. It was a Saturday. That evening, I started Googling, looking for it. And at one point, I looked at my husband. I'm like, maybe this is the thing I do. I don't know. Let's see if there's interest.
Yeah.
So I put up a Slack, put up a landing page, messaged a bunch of my communities, put it on LinkedIn. At the end of that first weekend, I had over 50 members, and
Wow.
everybody was like, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. We're at 5.5 months and at over 2,600 members.
That's staggering, which is just kind of a testament to of the market, how it's
Yeah.
changed, how it's shifted. I've been in the business for 6 years, and feel like part of my job in the last 6 years has been educating people that there's this different way to do business.
Yeah.
And the first couple of years out, people were like, what is this fractional? What is this interim stuff? Get out of here.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense for me. But I swear within even the last 2 years, and probably because of COVID, the millennials have had a play at changing the work
Oh,
life
yeah.
dynamic. And I really have felt the ground swell. So I think the timing for what you're doing, for what we're doing is really, really interesting. To your point too, there's a lot of supply. There's still the demand side still growing. And I think
Yeah.
that is on the education side. But what you mentioned about community is really interesting because we did a survey recently and we asked, the top 3 reasons why people are reluctant to jump out of corporate America. Number 1 was lack of insurance. Number 2 is there enough opportunity, right? I mean, can I sustain my current style of living or increase it. And third was actually community, which was a bit of a surprise to me. And you
Interesting.
use the word tribe too. And I do a lot of podcasts with entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs themselves are always looking for a tribe too.
Yeah.
A fractional leadership. I mean, you're at the end of the day, you're an entrepreneur. I mean, that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Oh,
You're
absolutely.
on your own, you're doing your own thing. And it's
Yeah.
those two worlds, have the same concern. Like, are there enough people like me that I can, rely on, talk to? But also to your point, it can be a bit lonely out there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's really interesting. The kind of again the parallels between the entrepreneurs and the fractionals, and the fact that community is a big piece here.
Oh, yeah. It's I think COVID has taught us a lot about the way we work, the way we want to work, the way we want to just connect.
Right.
And it was a horrible time, but I think a lot of valuable, useful things can come of it. And
Mhm.
I think people, when you were forced to not connect and be on your own for so long, people found creative ways like Zoom, like online to connect. And that's not going away,
No.
and I don't think it should. And I think it was wonderful. So yeah, we're human beings, like everyone's worried about ChatGPT and AI.
Yeah.
It cannot replicate the human connection that we all need.
Agreed. And not in our lifetime anyways, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's going to kids and other generations talking about. But I agree, with kind of our platform, I try to automate like the connection piece, and I totally agree. Like, you can't do it. And
No.
people like to talk to people, and
Yeah.
most individuals don't like to be have a computer analyze whether or not they're going to be a good fit for a company, right? So I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Kind of an oddball question for you in regards to fractionals and folks that maybe left corporate America, either kind of on their own accord or reluctantly. What are some thoughts on the fractional space in general? And what I typically tell people is that, hey, if you're looking for a fractional job or you're looking for a full-time job, in my personal opinion, I generally say, hey, focus on one side or the other, because if you're given 50% of your focus
Yeah.
side or this side, how effective really are you going to be at finding either a full-time job or a fractional gig? I'd love to kind of hear if you have these same conversations with your community, if you share kind of my thoughts, or if you've got a different perspective for those that may be considering jumping out.
Yeah. So I do agree that it's really hard to do more than one thing well at any time. Um, I do know it's challenging now, like we talked about, right? Like there isn't enough demand quite yet. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback all of a sudden. I'm not sure why. Okay, it's gone. One of the things like we actually did a panel discussion for those new to fractional because the community is open to both current fractional leaders and leaders considering going fractional. So we have many that are like, asking questions, anything from like how to like price themselves or like, do they need an LLC, like the whole gamut. And at one point, like I was like, you know what, we have enough of them. So I found like cross-functional members, each that had like 10 plus years, and we did like a lovely panel discussion, and I have like an FAQ for them. So we get a lot of those. And I also did like a blog post on some of the things that they need to keep, think about. Like, because if you've been W-2 all your life, like you don't think about like taxes, like what does 1099 mean, right? Like, or that you should really incorporate yourself to like even just an LLC level just to protect yourself, or how do you juggle time, or that you don't have, like you said, benefits or vacation, like all of these things, like you need to like think about because you really are in business for yourself, even if you're embedded in somebody else's team. And even just juggling more than one client is very different than being full in on one client, right? It's challenging enough as a leader to juggle your calendar and all your team one client. Do it times 3 or 4. It's a whole other level of challenge. So there are those things. And of course, the thing that we also say is that, you need to have some savings because it's going to take time. Like you can't just jump from one to the other and expect, to be okay. You need to have savings for a good 6 to 9 months before you make this shift, just to be on the safe side.
So some interesting points, and I totally agree. And so I get folks that come to me quite often that are kicking the tires, which is fine, because that's important. You need to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Decision. But the juggling piece that you brought up is something that I always share. And what I've seen with a lot of fractionals is that they're working maybe 2-3 gigs at one time, and they did a poor job at setting expectations.
Yes.
And so if you're talking about founders that are maybe sub 15 million ARR, maybe sub 10, every decision is a critical one.
Yes.
But they really rely on these fractionals for a lot of support, and it can blur the lines between other gigs, home life, and I've seen people burn out a little bit at job on the front end. They loved it for like 3 months, and then all of a sudden it just became a little bit too much to bear, which I can really appreciate. So I think that's really critical, is setting the expectations on the front end. And then the savings component as well. What I generally tell people is that, you mentioned 3, 6, 9 months. I'd be surprised if somebody lands a gig prior to 3, unless they already have things set up before leaving corporate America. And if you can do that, that can be the holy grail because it gives you some runway. But I've also seen more people leave the fractional space because, maybe savings wasn't aligned.
Yeah.
Maybe expectations again from them, from their perspective was not aligned with how long it can take, because ultimately a lot of business development is involved. You've got to meet people, you've got to network, and it is difficult. It can be the holy grail if you're able to cobble together the appropriate amount of roles, but it can be tough on the biz dev side.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one who's done, unless you've been in sales, no one that is a full-time employee ever has to network that way. Like it was totally new to me as well. It's like there's a reason I'm a COO and not a CSO, or CRO. It's challenging.
It is, and I've seen sometimes that CSOs may have an advantage in the space because of just the sales acumen they bring, but it's definitely something that can be learned by other people. It just starts with being able to kind of promote yourself, but also networking. And I found my business has grown as I've gotten better at networking, and I'd say that's 75% of the battle.
Yeah.
So finding ops, which is interesting. So you've been in the space for 7+ years. How have you really seen this fractional landscape change? We mentioned the influx of talent, but any other things that you've seen change, and what do you expect kind of in the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years as we're looking out?
So, as mentioned earlier, it's definitely grown, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I'm not quite sure when the inflection point will happen. I would say probably in the next 3 to 5 years. Like at some point, it's going to be a given, just like you apply to, full-time work, you apply to fractional work,
Right.
because it makes so much sense, right? For like any business on a budget, like to have a fractional leader that
100%.
once that education awareness hurdle is met, I think it's going to like take off like wildfire. It's just, we're not there yet. Too
Right.
few people know it's a thing yet. Um, and as the demand increases and awareness grows, there's going to be more and more fractionals. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, maybe 10 years out, that the majority of leaders and executives want to be fractional as opposed to W-2.
Sure. So a couple of data points. I forgot the exact percent, but it's something like 65% of all executives would leave their corporate job tomorrow if they had the right, fractional consulting opportunity lined up for them, which is interesting. And I'd love to hear about kind of, the makeup of your base here in a moment, but a couple other data points. You mentioned that some companies don't need, full-time leaders at a certain size. And what I've seen, a big influx on the CFO side, so the finance silo, with companies that are, sub 15, sub 20 million, they don't really need a full-time
Yeah.
CFO. I mean, probably not until you're 30, 40 million in revenue,
Yeah.
if that. And so I've seen companies start to kind of understand that, which has been interesting. Same on the sales side of the house, COO side, but also private equity in VC has really
Yes.
begun moving finally, which I thought they'd be a bit of a laggard, but they seem to be kind of really understanding that this can be a big fix, which is great.
Yes.
My other question about kind of your makeup, I posted something recently, and I read the article, so I don't want to take credit for this, but it was talking about the last third in people's careers, and that there's a lot of fractionals that are kind of in the
Yes.
last third of their career that are jumping out of corporate America. They want to get back to the work that they love, that they want to
Yes.
do, instead of being so removed. But also from a net financial perspective, they're also in the position where they don't need to work. So that the hourly rate's a bit different. They can be flexible on the model. And it seems, and I have a lot of conversations with folks that are jumping out in that kind of part of their career. What are you saying? Is it, combination of folks all over the board? Is it folks in the final third, the 2/3, or the front third?
I think I most of them are the final 2/3. So like, both there are definitely a few older fractionals who are, as you say, looking to like, they're not quite ready for retirement, but they want some more time to, just enjoy life.
Right.
So, having one or two at most fractional clients is perfect because they can have more flexibility. But
Mhm.
I'm seeing a lot of people with children
Yes.
looking for fractional too. Yeah, yeah. Because it's like, like I said, like
Mhm.
COVID taught us that we can be effective from home
Sure.
and we should value the other parts of our life. So people aren't willing to give that up.
No.
Um, there's another John Arms is one of the co-founders of Voyager U. He is part of my community and we collaborate and talk a lot. And he thinks that fractional is like the next big, revolution to labor revolution and the
100%.
first we've had since like, the factories. And I agree. Like it's about time.
It is, it's actually good that folks are starting to value family more, vacation more. And I was kind of one of those individuals where I had my second kid, built a house, traveling a lot international. And I was like, man, if this is what I'm doing for the next 15, 20 years of my career, like I'm out.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's kind of why I started my business. And it was really around quality of life. How do I create a better situation for me personally than what I had? So that's super interesting. And I definitely agree this could be the next big revolution. And tend to agree as well with kind of your numbers in maybe 3 years, 5 years. I feel like we're trending, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a lot of companies are still hard like programmed to think you need a full-time employee for every position, which is just not correct.
So here's a dirty secret. There have been full-time jobs and we all, many of us in the community agree. Like I can't think of any W-2 position I've had like full-time where like after 9 to 12 months, I didn't have like downtime and was being paid to twiddle my thumbs.
100%.
And, like if you look at my history, every 9 to 12 months, I would either get promoted, move on, or let go. it's like if you're competent, like unless you were talking Fortune 500, 1000, where there's constantly like, new challenges and things, like if you're good at your job, you're going to like optimize yourself out of a position. So it's really a waste. Like I've started saying this. I'm like, it's almost irresponsible for founders on a budget to hire full time because it really is a waste.
If you have the right person, it definitely can be,
Yeah.
for sure. The flip side of that, though, is in corporate America, the one thing I miss is that if you're having a bad week, bad month, you could just coast in at 65% of the time. Whereas here, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
moving quickly, and I don't have that
Yeah.
ability. But that's a conversation for another day. So 2 more questions, and we'll get you out of here. And really appreciate the time. Fascinating stuff. Your passion shines through. I love the space. Like this is where we're headed. So we talked a little bit about kind of business development. We talked a little bit about savings, things like that. But what are some other challenges that fractionals may experience when, they're jumping out of corporate America? So things they could keep a keen eye on, maybe the first 30, 60, 90, just to make sure they jump out in solid footing and are heading in the right direction.
So two things. One, like you said, setting expectations up front is critical.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot stress how important it is. And alongside of that, it needs to be a two-way conversation. Like you're interviewing the client as much as they're interviewing you, especially on a fractional leadership level. Like there has to be respect. And they need to not only respect you, but allow you to do the job. So if you don't feel that is the case, like at some point, like you walk away. And I know it's really hard to do that, but I remember the first time like I fired a client, it was liberating, but also very critical.
Sure. Same here. So I've been in the same situation where it's funny. It was like a client that paid me 20% of my fee, but took 80% of my time, the old 80. And I felt like I needed the business so bad that I
Yeah.
stayed in this kind of abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And then eventually I ended up firing them. They're my first client, by the way. Ended up firing them. And so there was a dip in revenue naturally. But then what I brought on was 4 other clients that were so much better. Revenue was better. Communication was better. And to your point about the kind of the two-way interview, what I generally tell folks is that you're only as good as the information you're provided. So if you feel like the person you're working with is going to be a roadblock, then that's going to stymie progress and your own success. So
Yes.
it's really critical that, yes, they're interviewing you, but it's a two-way street, and you need to be doing your due diligence
Absolutely.
as well. What are your thoughts about niching down? Like, for instance, when I talk to people who are kicking the tires or getting started in the space, I always tell them to be very prescriptive about, what they're trying to accomplish, make sure they're reaching out to their network, maybe create an executive bio or, maybe even a simple landing page or URL, and ultimately kind of let their network know what they're doing. But any thoughts on maybe what somebody can do to position themselves better for finding gig work once they kind of leave corporate America?
So it's funny that
it's probably a whole topic, but
yes. It's funny you should bring this up because I have been recently lectured by several friends and members that I'm, like I even so David Fox is in the community too. He's one of the co-founders or behind the Fractional Brain Trust, and he's great. He did a webinar, a lunch and learn for the community recently, and he just said like the riches are in the niches. And I've heard similar things from various marketers and salespeople. So I'm trying to be better at it myself. And I think, yes, because like I've done across industries before when it was not an issue, but now that there's more supply, I think I've been working on that as well myself. And I think it's critical because to David's point, it makes it easier for people to think of you and keep you top of mind for specific needs. So I think it's very important. And I know there are people out there that don't have websites, that just use their LinkedIn. I've always had a website.
Right.
I think it's just important.
I do too. I feel like it's table stakes, and you can have one created very, very easily.
Yeah.
But too, with your point about niching down, especially in a crowded market. And what I typically tell people is like, hey, distill it down to like the 3 areas where like you've got a use case, you've got quantifiable data, you can really kind of illustrate to somebody where you're most effective. And I feel like that can help folks really establish solid footing. But it is difficult because it's a lot easier to say, I can do a bunch of different things.
Yes.
It's so hard to articulate and have somebody understand what it is that you're really good at.
Yeah.
If you can master that, I feel like you'll be one step closer in the whole game.
Absolutely.
Excellent, Karina. Well, hey, that's all I got. Really appreciate your time. So where can people find you? We'll be sure to add a link to the podcast.
Sure. So I have a personal website, karinamikhli.com, which has all the other links to various things. I'm also on LinkedIn, and obviously fractionalsunited.com if anyone is a current fractional or leader considering going fractional.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, hey, keep up the good work. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate the conversation here.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.